Hey guys, Waterfowler41 here, and today we are finally getting rid of the OEM running boards on my GMC Sierra. So these running boards came with the truck. They're chrome. They worked out really well. They're good when I have my kids hopping in and out of the truck. However, with the black bumpers, the dark gray wheels, this chrome just really stuck out, and in my opinion, it had to go. So it was time to upgrade. So I contacted the team over at DeeZee, and we got set up with their brand new Hex Series running board kit. So basically this kit, these Hex Series running boards function just like the truck bed rack, their new truck rails, and their front bumper guard. So basically it uses this Hex piece of extruded aluminum, and then the steps for the running board just to fix right on there. So everything's cut to fit on the hexagon shape, and then use these channels to tighten everything down. So in the kit, just like most DeeZee kits, the running boards themselves are pretty universal. So you basically buy them to the right length for your truck. So I have a crew cab, so I got the longer one. So again, you buy the running board itself, that's sort of a general use kit, and then you buy the bracket kit. The bracket kit is customized for your truck. So the GM kit, the part number is DZ66317, and I'll have the part numbers down in the description below. You'll notice that the OEM running board has 4 brackets holding it on with plastic guards on them. And this is the only drawback to aftermarket running boards, or most of them. Not that you're going to be using 3 brackets, but that you kind of lose that nice finished plastic guard over the bracket itself. But for now, we're going to be going with the DeeZee brackets, powder coated black. Shouldn't rust. Then you get the main rail. And there's a couple things I want to point out that in a little bit. End caps for your main rail. And then 2 steps, so you get a front and back. They're the same size step. Obviously, you get the hardware. So to attach the steps to the main rail, you get these box nuts with the Allen head screws. And then to attach these to the truck, you get some 13mm bolts and a few clip bolts to fill in some spots to attach the brackets to. Tool-wise, it's a relatively simple install. So a couple 13mm sockets, a deep one, shallow one, an extension one. In case you have the factory running boards, it's going to take a little bit of a reach to get some of the bolts. And then a 5mm Allen wrench, which will tighten these bad boys down. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the factory running board. And like I said, there's 4 brackets on here. Each bracket has 2 bolts that you undo. One up top that's onto the frame of the truck, and then one below that goes to the body. So one top, below on all these. So you're going to be removing 8 bolts, and then the running board itself should pop right off. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll get to working on pre-assembly for the main rail and the brackets. All right, now that we got the factory running boards off, we're going to remove let's see, 4 more pieces of hardware. So since we're only using 3 brackets, so here's the bracket from DeeZee, we don't need the snap clip here anymore, or the one here. Now I will say, when you're removing these, be very careful, because they can fall down into here, and they're a pain in the butt to get out. So we're going to remove those, and DeeZee gives you new ones, but you don't need them on this one. This is where that 4th additional bracket went, where you need to reinstall these brackets. And I suppose you could use the factory ones, but with these I like to start from here. It's going to go one on the top like so, and a bolt will go through there, and then we're going to have one on the bottom like that. So we got our DeeZee bracket. It'll sit right up like that and bolt to the bottom, and then hold our hex bar right here. So the next thing we're going to do, and we don't need these push little I guess nutserts, for lack of a better term, on the front portion, and I'll show you. They give you enough in case you need them, but on certain of your trucks there's a nut that's already welded here, and then this hole up here is threaded. So instead of having to use those little nutserts that you get from DeeZee, you could just use the factory holes, and the screws that you get from DeeZee will fit into these holes. So the same goes for the front mounting point. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use these square nuts that are square bolts that are provided with the kit, and these come in pretty much every Hex Series part from DeeZee, and this is how you basically use the Hex channels for everything. So you got to make sure you position the main board, or the main rail, the proper way. So this big opening right here, this point, this is the outboard side of the running board, and this is the inboard. And these 2 brackets, or these 2 channels, are going to be your mounting channels. So before we put our end caps on there, we are going to take 3 of these square bolts and put them on the top, and then 3 for the bottom. These are the bolts that will, so you see how they're angled there. Those are the bolts that are going to sit up in these 2 holes on the bracket itself. So the other thing to note before you go ahead and start installing the main rail is take your finger and run it through this top channel. So in the instructions, DeeZee says look for, on the painted versions or powder coated versions, so this is the powder coated texture black, look for areas where it's evident that they use hooks to hang the part when they're painting it. You want that to face down. After we got 3 bolts in here and 3 bolts on the bottom, we're going to take our end caps and put them on. The end caps can only go on one way. So you see this big metal, basically like a grip, that will only fit in here. And everything kind of lines up. So what we're going to do is wrap, hopefully you can see that, we're going to wrap a towel around there, and then we're going to hit it with a hammer so we don't scuff up the end cap here. But again, make sure you have your 3 bolts in the top and the bottom, and they're in the proper channels before you do this, because there's basically no turning back. So this big metal piece is going to fit right in the main opening here, and then these little prongs fit inside the channels to line everything up. We're going to take that, put it over there, and then just give it a couple soft hits. That way you're not scratching up anything on here, and it goes on nice and smooth. There you go. So that's on. Alright, so we got the main rail mounted into the brackets loosely, so everything again is just kind of hand tight at this point. But when you're mounting this, especially if you're by yourself doing this, the 2 bolts, once you get the bolts lined up, they both will have to go in at the same time, so there really is no way to mess it up, and you have a lot of flexibility with sliding around. But it's helpful if you have the nuts with you, so as the bolts go in, you can put 1 nut on here, then you can go to the next bracket, put the next nut on, and then the 3rd one and do that one. That way you can at least get it hanging in there. And then you can go back in and put the 2nd nut in on each of them. So as far as lining it up, there's no science to it and there's no right or wrong way, but what I did is I kind of ignored the front and I went to the rear, and I lined up the rear of this main rail with basically the back of the cab. So it's about 15 3/4 inches from here to the outside of this little front mud flap thing on the truck, just to kind of give you a frame of reference. So again, there's no right or wrong way. But at this point, the brackets are hand tight, and then they're also hand tight to that main rail. So once you get the main rail where you want it, then we're going to go back through and we're going to tighten up each of the bracket connections to the main rail, and then we'll go back up underneath the truck and tighten that to the truck. All right, so we got the main rail bolted in. It's nice and tight. It's 15 3/4 from the rear. So the next thing we're going to do is mount our steps. So again, just like with where you put that main rail, there is no science to it. So I'll show you kind of how I placed it and then a few tips to that. So the first tip I'm going to show you that's going to save you some time is when you're putting in the bolts that you use to lock in the step, you're going to put 1 far to the middle of the truck, 2 in the middle, and then 1 on the rear. So basically the way these slide in is on the channel right there, and then you just pop it in. So you're going to have 4 on the top, and then 4 on the bottom. Same thing, you're going to have 2 in the middle and then 2 on the outsides. And the reason why I kind of exaggerate with how far those go out to the side is when you put this on, you got to slide those onto the bracket itself. So you want to have some room to play with it. So as far as placement of that, here's kind of my theory. So I have kids, obviously, and they use the running boards pretty much every day to climb in the truck. So what I did is I'm lining up, probably can't see it too well, but I'm lining up the step with this step pad, because that's basically when they crawl up there, they crawl up into the truck. And then that kind of keeps everything centered. So if I were to center it there, close the door to get an idea of where it's at. So it's kind of at the front of the rear door, but it makes sense once you open a door, kind of as far as flow and the ease of access. But again, we'll place it based off of that little sill plate here. So I'll kind of line it up there to make it easier. But again, they're adjustable, so if you don't like where they're at, you can just loosen them up and move them down. We got those bolts in there, and this takes some finesse. You don't want those bolts into those little square nuts tight because you want to have enough room to kind of pop them up over on top of this. And then we're going to use our 5mm hex head to tighten everything down. So you're going to have 4 on the top, and then you got 4 on the bottom here, and then we'll do the front step, and then we're all done. Well guys, we are all done. Took all of about 20-30 minutes to install the hex series running boards. Again, just to kind of sum it up, you install the you remove your stock running boards, you install the brackets loosely, install the main rail, tighten up the main rail, then tighten up the brackets to the truck, and then you go ahead and final step is to install the steps themselves. And then just to kind of give you an idea how mine line up, so it makes it easy for me to get in, just kind of put right there. And then as far as the rears, like I said, I have a 4-year-old and 2-year-old, so it was important for me to get that step lined up with how they crawl into the car, because obviously they put their hands and everything on there. Definitely changed the look, got rid of those gaudy chrome running boards and went to something a little bit more low-key, a little bit more aggressive looking. But again, check them out. This is DeeZee's new hex series running boards. But again, I'm very happy with how well these fit. The finish, again, it's perfect, and it definitely goes with the theme of my truck. So just one last view of it. So like, comment, subscribe below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions on these and how they fit or any install questions. Anyways, thank you very much.